Welcome to the Bourbon Van. I'm Phil.
I'm Julie. Want to talk about some whiskey today?
I do. A while back, somebody left a comment on one of our videos. Since then, we've seen that this comment was placed on a few other videos from other channels, so you may be seeing some of these videos around. John Smith.
Pretty anonymous name.
Yeah, a little bit anonymous, a little suspicious, but whoever John Smith is had this idea of the best whiskeys at every price point. That's under $20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 to 100. And it's an interesting concept because it does create a nice dialogue, and we're all about chatting here at the Bourbon Van.
We are all about chatting.
So we asked our Patreons what they thought. We dug into our spreadsheet of whiskeys here, and we're going to share our thoughts. And a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one, things cost different amounts all across the country. Yeah. Some things are readily available here that aren't readily available elsewhere, and vice versa. And so we're just going by what our personal preference is here. So it's meant to be a dialogue. So if you have varying thoughts on these things, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what your favorites are in the comments. But we're going to get started right now with the best bottle under $20 in our opinion. And Julie, why don't you kick us off?
We're going to start off with a bottle you can't even get in Oregon. It's very old Barton 90 proof. The 100 proof is probably a better value, but the 90 proof just hits my palate perfectly.
I think that's a great way to describe it. And that's why it's important to kick off this list this way, because everybody's going to have different thoughts and feelings on this. And that's a real solid bottle to kick things off. And my choice is Benchmark Full Proof. And again, not a bottle that's available here. We've only seen it a few times, and so this is a bit of a cop-out, but we found it at $19 out and about, and we know where to find it in Indiana, and we've returned to that store several times in our travels to get that bottle again. So our choices, very old Barton 90 proof and Benchmark Full Proof.
And for our Patreons, not a big surprise, they wanted to go with the Evan Williams Bottled in Bond.
There were a lot of good suggestions here, but Evan Williams Bottled in Bond just kept coming back over and over again, and that's not a huge surprise. It's so well loved out in the community, very affordable, and yeah, not a huge surprise. All three of those bottles, fantastic, but that Evan Williams Bottled in Bond makes these lists every single time.
So next up is the $20 to $30 range. And don't hate me, guys, but I'm just going with the basic Buffalo Trace.
I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. It's well-aged, flavorful.
And I know a lot of you can't get this bottle or haven't seen it in a while, but it is actually pretty available in our neck of the woods, and it only comes in at like $26, so it's perfect for this list.
Yeah, it is readily available here in Oregon, and so you can't hate on it. I don't think you can hate on it.
It is delicious.
It's very good, absolutely. So I can't imagine anybody's going to be too upset with you. Probably. But if you are, why don't I bring us back here? Wild Turkey 101 is my choice. And even though it's pushing $30 now, I really, really like that bottle. And I actually just rediscovered that bottle recently. I wasn't a big fan of it until the last couple of months here. And it's been a great bottle this summer. Huge flavors, 101 proof, very satisfying. And yeah, Wild Turkey, legendary distillery. What's not to like there?
You can't go wrong with 101. And a couple solid bottles recommended by our Patreons as well.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with either one of these. They recommend the Old Forester 100 proof, the signature bottle. If you like the Old Forester profile, that's a no-brainer right there. And 1792 small batch, which we've seen in the $20 to $30 range and $30 to $40 range. But it's not super available around here. We don't see a ton of 1792. Otherwise, that might have been on our list too, but that's a pretty good one. And then, of course, there's one honorable mention we have to make here, and it's our personal favorite, a bottle that means a lot to us. It's the Old Granddad Bonded. We know it's not everybody's favorite out there, but that's our favorite of that high rye Jim Beam line and hits our palates perfectly and one of our absolute favorites. So if you haven't tried Old Granddad Bonded yet, now may be a good time.
I do love Old Granddad Bonded. The $30 to $40 range, you're going to hear a couple Bourbon Van classics. I'm going with that straight up Maker's Mark 46.
What a great bottle that is.
It's so great, from beginners to extermediates. I just love it.
What's not to like about Maker's Mark 46? The stave profile. It adds so much flavor and richness. For less than $40, you're getting a bottle that brings so much to the table. It would be really difficult to make this list and not have Maker's 46 on it. And for me, Russell's Reserve 10-year, and I just love this whiskey. So we go from a whiskey that gets the extra stave treatment, some extra work goes into it, to a whiskey that's aged for a full 10 years. These are really solid values, both of these. But again, Russell's Reserve 10, a Wild Turkey product, you're starting to see the theme here. It's starting to build. And I just love the overall profile of it. It's a little spicy, a lot sweet, 90 proof, and it just presents a ton of flavor. So there's a lot to like. Maker's 46, Russell's Reserve 10 year.
You can't go wrong with either, and they're both really readily available across the country.
They're everywhere out there.
And speaking of readily available, our Patreons picked Knob Creek 9.
Yeah, talk about readily available. That one is everywhere. It's been a solid value for years, so we definitely can't find any fault there. They also talked a lot about David Nicholson Reserve. It came up a few times, and that came up on our underrated bourbons list not too long ago. So that's a bottle that we've got to get on our shelf and try out for ourselves. We haven't had a bottle of it before. We've only tried samples of it, so time for us to dig in a little deeper on that one. But yeah, Maker's 46, Russell's Reserve 10, and Knob Creek 9 leading this list, and they're all readily available. Go find these bottles. All right, $40 to $50.
And I'm going with a bottle you can't even find here. It's still Austin the Musician.
How good is that bottle?
I just remember the first time that we had it. It was so delicious, so surprising.
Nice, low proof, easy sipper. It's not aged all that long, but it doesn't matter because that Texas heat takes care of you. And speaking of bottles that aren't available here, our Patreons recommended Chattanooga 111, another bottle that's only aged for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that wasn't my pick. But knowing that they had it on the list, I was able to go with something different.
There you go. Very versatile here at the Bourbon Van. And my choice, actually, this shouldn't come as any surprise. We're going back to that Wild Turkey well, and I'm going Rare Breed Bourbon, which I just love it so much.
It's such a classic.
We have put it in blinds against bottles much more expensive than it, and it blew us away. If you haven't had Wild Turkey Rare Breed, you really do need to try this one out. Find a nice quiet place to sit by yourself and just explore flavor, and you're gonna find something to like in this bottle. I'm not gonna guarantee it. I don't guarantee anything, but I'm gonna say Wild Turkey Rare Breed, one of my absolute favorite bottles, and definitely one of my favorite values for this $40 to $50 price range. I personally don't think you can do any better.
And if you're somebody who likes to drink their whiskey outside, I find that Rare Breed really shines outside.
You love drinking outside.
I do. 50 to 60 is up next, and it's a little bit tricky because I find that bottles are either less than that or more than that.
It is a weird window, but there's a few bottles that fall in that window that we really like. And again, we're getting into that area where maybe you're getting these for less, maybe you're getting them for a lot more, but they're worth a mention on this list regardless. And let's start off with an MGP sourced bottle that comes to us from Nevada, talking about Smoke Wagon Small Batch, which won the Advent tournament for me back in 2021. I still, for 100 proof, am shocked by how much flavor you get out of that bottle.
And one of the bottles that surprised us the most in our Advent Tournament 2022 was Wilderness Trail Bottled in Bond.
Yes, the high rye mash bill on that one. How good is that bottle?
So good.
So strange. There's flavors of kiwi on it, sometimes a little cantaloupe, muskmelon, just the weirdest flavors coming out of that glass, but it's so satisfying. And that 6-year age sweet mash, they're doing a lot of cool things at Wilderness Trail. That's one of my favorite bottles. I love it.
Meanwhile, our Patreons came up with 3 really good ones.
Yeah, you can't fault them at all for this. A Woodford Double Oaked, there's very little to say about that. It's chocolatey, it's fudgy, it's tasty, and it's a classic. Everybody loves that one. Knob Creek Single Barrels. If you can get Knob Creek Single Barrels in your neck of the woods, whether they're chosen by your favorite liquor store or wherever you might be getting them from, Knob Creek Single Barrels are always a great value and usually well-aged, very flavorful, and coming in about 120 proof. There's a lot to like there at this price point. And then finally, a bottle that's been coming up more and more in our discussions with people around the country, and it came up a lot as we were looking for feedback on this list, Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond, aged 7 years. And I gotta say, this one just came to Oregon for the first time. It is in the system. We're gonna be able to buy it on the shelf soon. We're not gonna have to chase all the way down to California to get it. That makes me like it even more. So yeah, all solid suggestions, lots of flavor in the 50 to 60 price range. There's a lot to like there.
60 to 70, you guys know my choice. We're talking Old Forester here, and really Old Forester has a little bit of something for everyone. Me personally, I love that 1910. Phil, probably more the 1920 guy. Both a great value.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, flavor profile isn't for everybody, but it's for an awful lot of us. And the 1910 is so toasted, so deliciously flavorful and rich, and at 93 proof, so much flavor coming out of that bottle, so good. And the 1920, 115 proof, you're getting an awful lot for the money on both of those, and they've come up in price a little bit over the last couple of years. These were in the solid $50-ish range when we started buying bourbon. A little more expensive now, but they're definitely still mainstays on our shelf. And one of the bottles that's still under $60 here, Old Forester Statesman, very nearly made this list. Obviously, we are big fans of Old Forester, so if you're not a big fan of Old Forester, let us know what you're putting in this price range, because there's a lot of goodness in the 60 to 70 price range as well.
But there's a local honorable mention that we have to talk about. If it was available everywhere, it would definitely make this list. It's Trails End 10.
Yeah, Trails End 10, aged 10 years, and then gets finished in a Garyana oak barrel. So much toasted oak flavor. It's so good. And we're seeing it in more and more places, and hopefully they expand their reach and you can find it in your neck of the woods very soon. But Trails End 10 has won every flight that it's been in for our channel, and we can't talk about it enough. We just love it.
And our Patreons had strong feelings in this price range, and one of the bottles actually almost made the list for us as well.
Baker's 7. I mean, that's that Jim Beam profile that doesn't speak to everybody, but Baker's 7 appeals to us. It's rich, it's decadent, so flavorful, and if you like vanilla on your whiskey, you gotta try Baker's 7. It is now a mainstay on our shelf. Even though it's more expensive now than it was previously, it's not a deterrent for us. That bottle is on our shelf all the time. Larceny Barrel Proof, the other bottle that there was consensus on amongst our Patreons, they're all over this bottle, and it's never been a huge favorite of the Bourbon van, but for the money, even we have to admit, that's a solid value.
So last up is the 70 to 100. We kind of lumped it all together, and we could go kind of anywhere on this one.
Yeah, depending on what part of the country you're in and whether or not your liquor stores are pricing things way up or not. This one goes all over the place, and there was actually very little consensus amongst our Patreons because at that price point, you could be getting almost anything. So for us, there's one that's very obvious that's going to make just about every list. And then you actually have one that I think is a little bit unusual. Why don't you tell us what that is?
So this is a second appearance for this brand, but it's a bottle that I definitely think is worth the money. Again, we can't even get it here, but it's Smoke Wagon Uncut Unfiltered.
Yeah, worth the drive for us to get
Worth
down.
the drive.
Whenever we get to Reno, it's where we stock up on Smoke Wagon, and it's always worth it. That is one of those bottles that comes in various batches, so the flavors are different every time we get a different bottle of that, but there's no denying that those flavors are always satisfying.
And the bottle is just gorgeous.
So now we're at that point where I get to tell you about this bottle that I love. That's not going to be any surprise whatsoever. It's Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Comes out in 3 batches every year, and this bourbon was my first whiskey love. It continues to be one of my favorite releases every single year. Big proof, big flavor, and it continues to be a solid value in my opinion. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because you guys have heard me talk at length about this bottle in the past. You know how much I love it, and I'm sure a lot of you love it as well. So at that $70 to $100 price point, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, Smoke Wagon Uncut Unfiltered, what are you getting at that price point? What are you getting at all these price points? Let us know all about your favorite values in bourbon and from wherever we are.
To wherever you are.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's try one of each of these.
Ooh, that'd be a long day.